right, I am here with Sam Freeman, director of the film Femme. I was blown away by this film, and it was funny because after the film, we went immediately to another screening of a different movie, but the whole time I was watching the other movie, which I enjoyed as well, I kept thinking about your movie.
Thank you.
I think one of my takeaways from the film was that there was no black or white. There were shades of gray throughout this entire film. And obviously it deals with a lot of heavy subject matter, but at the same time, there's, no matter where you stand, I think everyone can relate to feeling like either one of these characters have felt at one point in their life. Whether you've been bullied, whether you've been misunderstood, whether you've loved someone that, you don't feel you're getting the respect from, whether there's just so many things that are tackled in this. Where did you draw from to build a film like this?
I think from ultimately across the process of building it from so many different places. I think we started on a sort of like from a kind of macro standpoint. We started way back at the beginning when we decided we wanted to make a film from a point of view of loving the kind of sort of late night neo-noir thriller genre of films, but feeling like as kind of queer men that we also felt slightly excluded from them, or like we didn't have a presence in those films. We didn't see ourselves in those films. And so I suppose in a way wanting to kind of like
have representation,
put our stamp on it, like kind of like open, like march in through the front door. And I think that energy is kind of in the film, and it exists within Jules because he's someone who is determined not to be overlooked, not to like to kind of walk into Preston's world and take power. I think so. I suppose it is a story ultimately about two characters who've really had to fight for their stake in the world, to sort of to claim their identities within this world. They're actually two very similar people who've gone in very separate directions.
Well, and that's the thing. The similarities between the two of them are uncanny at some point.
That's how they connect ultimately. I think because they're so like on the surface they're so different, but at their core there's something that they really recognize in each other. And so I think, as you said, that feeling of wanting to be seen, I think wanting to be recognized, wanting to be respected, wanting to feel powerful, I suppose, is something that we really drew upon. I think that drives both of them, and that drove us to make the story. We were really interested in the idea of drag, and the idea. There's a famous RuPaul quote, which is "We're all born naked, and the rest is drag." And we actually talked about that a lot during the film, because we always talked about all of the characters. Like, what is their drag? What is this character's drag? What are they? What is the performance of their identity that they're putting on to feel seen, to feel powerful within the world?
Like Preston's drag is his streetwear. Is his his BMW that he drives, which might not be his.
Which might not be his, exactly.
All these things, so you can see. So which I love that. That makes a lot of sense. It's funny how when you watch a film like this, I can't help but think from the point of view of when I've watched films at a very impressionable age. I remember some of the films that I watched in my late teens, early 20s really left a mark on me. And I remember watching My Own Private Idaho probably at around 21 when it first came out. And I remember the impression it made on me. And it was so powerful. And again, it had so many different shades in the film. And this brought me back to that same kind of feeling of saying, imagine if I was 19 to 21 watching this, how much it would leave a mark on me.
Oh, that's very kind of you to say. I think mine was Mysterious Skin, actually.
Okay, right.
I think that sort of, there's some kind of link there for me. That left like a really big impression on me growing up, and I watched it like a load of times.
But these films where the characters are pretty, like you're saying, they're in drag.
Yeah.
You know, they have their own drag, and Idaho was the same kind of thing. Like they're uncomfortable yet they're comfortable, and it's so Femme really left a mark. The performances were phenomenal.
They're brilliant, aren't they?
They're really, really good.
Yeah.
It must have been just an absolute pleasure putting that cast together and then working with them.
Yeah, it really was, and they just, Nathan and George, like right from the word go, the first time we ever got them together to sort of see what they'd be like together, they sort of, as two people, had quite instant chemistry. They got along very well. They were very comfortable with each other very quickly, and I think that ended up being so important to the process, because it is a dark film, and you know, the days were long and intense, and the things that they had to do together, like like it goes to some dark places, and they really threw themselves at it. I mean, in every moment, whether it be sort of the fight scenes or the intimate scenes, they never held back. And I think the fact that they got along so well and were always able to kind of laugh afterwards, they sort of, you know, we worked with an intimacy coordinator a lot, and they had a kind of like a ritual they would go through together to kind of go into scenes to sort of like check in, check out. They would always check with each other. So it really was like a joyous process working with them, and they brought a great energy to set and kind of set the tone in that way. And I think that really shows on screen, even though obviously the relationship between the characters is very different. There is just a sort of natural chemistry between those two guys that just you feel.
There's a certain point in the film where you really feel Jules takes power back, and it's all revolves around a video game. Where did that come in, and why that video game? Why Street Fighter?
It's video game is quite an important part of me and Ping's relationship, my co-director.
Okay. Are you guys gamers together?
I'm a gamer. He's a backseat gamer.
Okay.
So I play and he criticizes. Basically, it was quite a big fun part of our relationship. We used to live together.
Okay.
And he would watch me game, and he would, you know, encourage me to do better.
And was it that specific game?
No, it wasn't. So I think the way that it developed, interestingly, was partially, I think, the video game thing came in early on as a sort of, you know, part of our relationship, and obviously the film is so much about gender and masculinity, and video games are so associated with certain forms of masculinity, and the idea of a beat 'em up was interesting to us because it's about Jules's aggression, his feelings after the attack, his wanting to take power back, his fantasy, almost a fantasy of violence.
Sure.
But also, as we developed it reminded Ping of something that happened to him when he was younger, and this is how it became specifically Street Fighter. Was that when he was at high school, he always remembers that there was a time when there was a whole group of guys from his school who went to like an arcade, and Street Fighter was playable there.
Right.
And one of Ping's friends, who was like a more kind of like a feminine young guy, got up to the machine when they were all playing, and these guys were sort of like the alpha guys. They were quite butch, and they were all playing Street Fighter, and they gave him a go, and he picked Chun-Li as his character, and they all made fun of him, and then he wiped the floor with all of them, and Ping always remembers it as being such a like empowering, joyous moment that we were like, that's it, that's
the character.
So it comes from quite a lot of real things, that moment, and it is such a like, it's definitely a favorite moment.
And again, you know, the characters are played so beautifully, and the fact that, you know, there are moments when we actually, someone like Preston, who how could you ever feel bad for him? You kind of feel, you just feel a little like, oh, for him, like especially when he shows up to Jules's party, he's got a present with him, and you're like, oh, and then, you know, it's just, there's just so much. It's great, because to me the definition of a great script and a great film is when you can really see all the sides of the character and feel empathy on all sides. It's great. It's so, I mean, it's very much it speaks to, you know, a European way of making films. You know, if you're making films in North America, a lot of the times it's, you have to have a hero,
right? You
got to have a villain, and that's just not the way life works.
No.
So I guess it's very honest.
Thank you. I really That makes me really happy that
Yeah.
you say that, because that was very important to us, that we weren't interested in ideas of kind of good and evil.
No.
Like, we don't believe in those. Like, you know, we're trying to tell a human story, and therefore it's about human beings.
Oh, you did.
And hopefully trying to explore why people do some quite awful things, and how the world that we have creates those people in turn. So for us, it was always about showing you Preston in the beginning in almost quite a two-dimensional way, because you really are looking from the outside in, and you're seeing his drag. You know, you're looking at him objectively at his performance, and then as Jules' revenge is to try and kind of strip back the layers of his drag. And so as we do that kind of slowly of the film, exposing more and more sides of him, so you go, oh, this guy, I guess, sort of is kind of hateful, but he's also like, or at least I felt that way, but I also sort of understand how messed up he is, how confused he is, how difficult his life has also been. We always said that would be the magic trick of the film, if we could transform Preston and make you feel something different about him by the end of the film. Like, if you could feel some level of at least conflicted about how you feel about him at the end of the film, then that would be the magic trick of the film.
No, you achieved.
Thank you.
You pulled the rabbit out of the hat.
Thank you.
So I was talking with my mom about the film. She didn't get a chance to see it, but I was just telling her. She's like, "Oh, so what'd you get to see at Fantasia?" And I told her about the movie, your movie, and I said, there's so many different angles to the characters, and my mom's like, well, it sounds like they really did their research, and you got a bit of the therapist thumb of approval. Now you had mentioned to me before that there were some therapists that kind of got their hands on this film a bit.
Well, yeah, Sam Ritzenberg, who's our producer at Agile, his mum is also a therapist, and I remember her stamp of approval on the script. She read it. Was actually like one of the most important to me. Like, when she we always had a lot of people read it, and people who know a lot about kind of scripts or story structure, but actually it was her being like, she read it and was like, this rings true to me.
Wow.
These characters feel real. It makes sense that he would do this, because this is what's happened to him. And that for me was it just meant a lot. It was really important to me, and it made me feel like we'd achieved something when she sort of could look at it and go, I believe this. So yeah, therapists. Show therapists your script. Yeah.
Awesome.